Hello there and welcome to PS4 Fun. And late last night I finished Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice a week after I purchased it, and felt I wanted to talk about it because it is a game that I have found to be incredibly moving, and Ninja Theory's approach to this game and what they want to achieve for it is incredible, and it is an experience that is going to stay with me for a very long time. Can't say I enjoyed playing it. It's not a game you enjoy, but it's a game that draws you in, that is compelling, and has some very serious things to say about mental health, but also about the gaming industry as a whole. So I want to discuss a few things. I mean, the first thing is Ninja Theory. Ninja Theory are a developer which has put out some great games. Heavenly Sword I enjoyed, Enslaved Odyssey to the West I absolutely adored. I didn't play the DMC reboot other than the demo, but they've got a list of quality games that they've been involved with, and they have been in the forefront of motion capture or performance capture in games, having a very long-standing relationship with Andy Serkis through Heavenly Blade and through Enslaved Odyssey to the West. And what they wanted to do was to create a triple A quality game on a lower mid-range budget. They called themselves a triple A indie. A lot of people have been saying that's not such a good description, but it's a double A game. So what you've got is a game that has a great deal of quality to it, but is a shorter length and a lower price. And Hellblade retails for $24.99 in the UK, $29.99 in the US. It's about 8-9 hours long, first playthrough, if you take time to kind of soak the atmosphere in, which I certainly did. And you can probably add an extra hour onto that just because the photo mode is absolutely awesome. But what they wanted to do was to create this quality AAA experience on a lower budget. And they've done this quite extraordinarily well. It is graphically gorgeous. They were very innovative in the way that they used technology to get this. I mean, you're looking at footage of the game at the moment. I'm only showing the first couple of hours of the game in this, so there's going to be no massive spoilers. But it is, without a doubt, one of the most gorgeous games I've ever played. In terms of quality of animation for the central character, we're talking order 1886 levels of detail here. It is quite extraordinary. And they did this on a very, very low budget with, lights in flower pots. And IKEA poles and that kind of stuff. I mean, it was so brave, and it dared to be different. This is a game that they quite happily said would not appeal to everyone. It deals with some very serious issues, which we'll talk about later, and it's not a comfortable game to play by any means. In fact, the game goes out of its way to make you feel uncomfortable an awful lot of the time, which is to its credit. And they went, no, not everyone's going to like this game, but we have something that we want to say about the industry, so to encourage other developers to do these mid-range games. So instead of a £10 indie or a £60 AAA, we've got something in the middle that we can enjoy and we can engage with, which is of high quality. And this did dare to be different. Its approach to subject matter and a process to develop the game, which is incredibly brave. Now, the quality of the game is apparent. The motion capture, or the performance capture, is among the best I've seen. Senua, the central character, is so beautifully acted and beautifully rendered that you believe in her. Immediately you engage with her. There is no uncanny valley going on here. The eye tracking is just amazing, and you just can't not engage with her as a character. The other thing they did that was very clever is that they used, because it's expensive to do performance capture, the other characters that are in the game were captured in real time. The actors were dressed in costume and their performances were filmed, and then they were added as full motion video afterwards with effects that made them look gamey, if you like. And you will see an example of that throughout this video, which was very effective because they looked slightly different than Senua, and because these people, these other characters, are voices in her head to do with Senua's psychosis and her mental illness, that slight dislocation actually worked because it made them look a little bit more unreal, made them feel a little bit more outside of your own experience. So the quality of it was brilliant. The sound design in particular. Now, this is the interesting thing about it is that there is no HUD in Hellblade at all. There is no life bars, there is no mini-map, there are no tutorials, there is nothing that is going to take you out of the experience of playing the game. It is there So unless you actually hit the pause menu and have a look at the controller layout, you've no idea what the controls are going into the game. And they just didn't want any kind of engagement breaking there. So I would encourage you to pause the game when you play it for the first time and just remember the controller layout. It's not particularly difficult. Because they didn't want anything to get in the way. So the HUD actually is quite ingeniously visual, so you can see the damage that your enemies are taking in the few fights. It's not a combat-heavy game by any stretch of the imagination. But also the voices, the 3D binaural sound that they used means that the voices of the HUD, if an enemy is behind you about to strike you, one of the voices will say behind you, which will warn you that it's going to happen. There's a section later on in the game where you are blind, essentially, and you have to navigate through a level just really using the sound, and it's so beautifully put together that you can do that. It's perfectly feasible, and all the voices in Senua's head come from different positions, so you can begin to identify with them, which is something I'll talk about later on. But the sound design is exquisite. It adds a real sense of connection to what Senua is going through, and draws you into the game. There are other things that draw you in too. The camera is very close to Senua, giving it a very claustrophobic feel. When she is knocked down in battle, the camera drops to her level as she's lying gasping on the floor, so you get a sense of her pain. And the combat, though not incredibly difficult, is visceral, and it's harsh. And if you make a mistake, you are punished for it. She is not an incredibly strong Marine. If she takes a couple of hits, she feels it. It slows her down. She can't react as quickly. You have to be very careful and very patient with the combat, otherwise you will die. And one of the very early things, which has got some criticism, but bear with me on this, it's not a big deal, is that they, right at the beginning of the game, they say that if you die too many times, the rot that has infected you will reach your brain and they will erase all of your progress. They'll completely reset the game and you have to start again. This is a threat which I haven't seen anywhere on the internet that anyone has actually experienced. I certainly didn't. I only died 5 times throughout the whole of the playthrough, and one of those was because I was an idiot and fell off stuff. But what they do is they give you that threat, so you develop a little voice in the back of your own head. When you go into combat or you're doing anything that might lead to your death, what you're very suddenly acutely aware of is the fact that this matters, because if you screw this up, you could actually have all of your progress erased. So you actually develop almost a little voice in your head all the time nagging at you not to be rubbish in combat and not to make an idiot of yourself. And that kind of very much ties into what they're trying to do with Hellblade, is to help people understand psychosis. And it does that incredibly well. Ninja Theory spent a lot of time with experts, professors and medical professionals, and people who had actually suffered psychosis and mental illness, to make sure that this was something that was front and centre in the game, but also was done very subtly and very in a very relatable and in a very honest way. Senua, the central character, is a strong woman. Despite her illness, she is strong. She's not a victim. She has been subjected to all sorts of trauma, but she's not a victim. She is someone who is fighting this. And the voices are very much a part of her personality. And also the voice acting within the game is just superb. Whether it is just a whispered voice that you hear every so often, or whether it is the voice that kind of narrates the game to you. Right at the beginning of the game, you are addressed directly by one of the voices in Senua's head, and are invited into her head as almost as part of her psychosis. So it gives a very personal feel, and that is beautifully done. And the little voices, whether they are encouraging, whether they are disparaging, whether they are helpful, whether they are distracting, are all come from within this 3D space. Please play this game with headphones or you're going to completely miss the point. But all of these voices come from different positions, and you identify them. They begin to have a personality. So, they're not just distraction, they are actually part of Senua's personality in many respects, and are characters in and of their own right, which is, that's amazing. So it's got this all the time, this noise in your head. Also, the puzzles are solved using things that have been described within psychosis. seeing patterns in things, seeing shapes in things, a dislocation of the world around you, a narrowing of the world around you, and the puzzles, which, an awful lot of the game is exploration and puzzles with bits of combat. That works very well as well. Some people have criticised that it goes on too much and is too repetitious. I didn't find that personally. I solved the puzzles fairly quickly. And the only time I got a bit stuck is because I wasn't being observant. It was me being stupid, not anything to do with the game. So it's done very cleverly and very subtly, and only when it is necessary. And again, it's about this sense of people seeing things and thinking things differently than people who don't have these illnesses. And they perceive the world in a very different way. The lighting, some of the way, the effects that happen throughout the game, particularly when Senua is under stress, give that sense of dislocation, give that sense of the world closing in on you or being fractured, and it is just so compelling. Towards the end of the game, there was a point where I had to stop playing. I couldn't play anymore because I was feeling quite stressed about it. And that might be a strange thing to say about a game, or a strange thing to actually say as a complementary thing to the game, but this game was not just about kicking demons in the teeth. It was about this journey that Senua was undertaking, and you being a part of that journey, however uncomfortable that journey was going to be. And towards the end, I'd just gone through and I knew I was approaching the last boss, and I went, right, I'm stopping now. I've had enough. It's quite late at night. I'm feeling quite exhausted by what I've been playing for the last 90 minutes. Going to stop. I'm going to tackle the ending of the game afresh, which is exactly what I did. And all of these subtle clues, these visual clues, these audio clues, the beautiful way in which Senua is animated, all bring this game into something that is so compelling, so honest, and presents psychosis and mental illness in a way that someone who hasn't suffered from it can begin to understand what other people are going through and see that it is not something that is a weakness in that person. It is something that they have to live with. It's something they have to get over, and in many respects will give them strength, because ultimately Senua does begin to draw strength from these voices that she hears, and it is just incredibly powerful. The sound design, the visual design, the performance capture, the scripting, the voice acting, all creates this wonderful arena in which we can talk sensibly about a subject as divisive and as personal as mental illness. So in summary, this was an incredibly brave thing for Ninja Theory to do. I have nothing but respect for them. I pre-ordered this game. I'm not someone who pre-orders games much anymore, but I wanted to support them. Even if I had played this game and not enjoyed it, I still would have considered my £25 well spent, because I was so engaged with what they were trying to achieve in terms of altering the perception of what a AAA game is to an extent, but also in terms of doing games for grown-ups. Dealing with issues in a way that hopefully will educate and help people understand. And certainly the runes that you can collect throughout the game go through Norse mythology. If you are doing Norse mythology and you want to learn about Sigmund and Odin and Drunhilde and Ragnarok, must say, great way to educate yourself. They've got a historian in to make sure that worked properly as well. And what I really hope is that this opens the door for other developers, which is what Ninja Theory wanted to do. They wanted to show people that this was something that could be done, to get this mid-tier game created, so we could not have to spend £60 on a really good quality title, and also to create a game that was for adults. And by that, in not terms of how graphic it was in terms of swearing or sex or anything like that, but in terms of subject matter, in terms of treating video games as a medium that can inform, educate, as well as entertain. And in the perspective of this particular gamer, they have managed to achieve that with incredible skill, with incredible dexterity, and have created a game that I will be carrying around with me and be talking about and be discussing for many years to come. So Ninja Theory, thank you so much for Hellblade. For me, it was a game that was almost perfect in its execution, and certainly in terms of what they wanted to achieve from the perspective of this game, where they achieved it very well. A game that was compelling, a game that was value for money, but a game also that was involving, was educational, and was honest to the subject matter that they were trying to engage with. So thank you, Ninja Theory. If you haven't played Hellblade yet, please pick it up, and if you are going to play it, stick a set of headphones on, because it is the only way to experience this game in its full glory. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this interesting and informative. If you have, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and as always, have a fabulous gaming week, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye for now.